will address the very exciting topic of regulation and the role of regulation and the evolution of regulation in the infrastructure and digital economy. Quick introduction on my side, just to repeat. So I lead our TMT, telco, media, and technology practice for Deloitte in the Middle East. I've been in the region for the past 18 years and 30 years overall working in the TMT space. My two esteemed panelists, Dr. Chafic and Omar, I will let them introduce themselves and, as importantly, introduce some of the very relevant work that they're currently also doing in this in the topic. But first and foremost, I wanted to kick off the conversation. And there's been, of course, a lot of talk around the position of the UAE as a regional hub, right? When it comes to telco and telecommunication and the overall digital economy. And as we're talking about regulation, and that first question will be directed to Omar, I'm keen to get your views on what do you think are the relevant regulations and policy that need to be put in place to make sure that from a infrastructure and telecom standpoint, the region and the UAE in particular remains number one competitive, both from a market standpoint and a pricing standpoint.
All right, thank you, Emmanuel, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll start quickly by introducing myself. My name is Omar Radade, and I'm currently heading the MENA practice for SPC Network, which is a consultancy firm specializing in the telecom and media sectors. We focus mainly on policy and regulatory economics, market access, among other specialties. I come with quite a good number of years in this sphere. I've been working in this sphere for 22 years on both sides of the industry, telecom operators. I worked also with regulators for a significant amount of time. And I'll head directly to the question. So there are, in my opinion, and there are two key issues relevant to, policies and related to this sector, to the digital economy and digital infrastructure. The key issues are mainly, number one, the development and advancement of the infrastructure itself, such that you can build and drive the applications of the digital economy over. And the second issue is the affordability of that infrastructure. So any regulator or any policies that should come out from the regulatory authorities in the region or any part of the world should mainly focus on the enabling the advancement of the infrastructure development in the first place, through making it easy for the investment, for probably relaxing taxes at some point and allowing the faster recovery of investment by the parties doing the investment in that infrastructure. And the second point is the affordability. And I think this is a very, very important issue, because you can have the most advanced infrastructure in the world, but if it's too expensive, then little could happen, because it becomes prohibitive to build. So UAE has done a lot of work in enabling the advancement of the infrastructure here and the development here. The infrastructure is quite developed in the UAE in all aspects when it comes to connectivity, data centers. But I think there's a bit more work that needs to be done on affordability, more competition on in areas such as the required connectivity to enable that infrastructure. Probably would be a good thing to have over long term.
Thanks, Omar. And maybe Dr. Chafic, if you can maybe double click on this point, which is particularly important, around affordability and of connectivity when it comes to data center and how to have the right regulatory instruments to enable it.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I will introduce myself and what we are doing in my organization. My name is Chafic Chaya. I'm the regional manager for public policy and government affairs for the Middle East. So RIPE NCC is one of the 5 RIRs around the globe. RIR, that means Regional Internet Registry. We allocate the IP address for our members around the 76 countries. Just to give you a small example, we allocate the IP address to Durou and Etisalat here, and they allocate the IP for you as end users so you can connect to the internet. So our role is very critical to keep this unique, unified identifier for each user. On the other side, we are working on statistic measurements to help decision makers and regulators in making their agile and adaptable regulation and policy. One of the important challenge that we still have in this region, yes, governments are investing heavily in infrastructure and in capacity building, but the main challenge that they overlooked is the collaborative regulation or the policy across borders. You know that internet is inherently cross-global. That means we have one internet. We call it the network of the networks. For example, if we want to regulate a port or we want to regulate a national entity, the regulator can do this. But if we want to regulate a sub-cable or a cable of internet from Mumbai to Marseille, it's difficult. So we need this collaborative regulation between the stakeholders. Another important point that to have this neutral infrastructure there, it should be governed by what we call multi-stakeholder approach. That means no one can control this infrastructure. It should be governed by the government, by private sector, technical community, academic, and civil society as end users. And this is the spirit of the internet that we have today. So to get into this collaborative regulation, we need dialogue. We need continuous dialogue between all these stakeholders. And these dialogues happen in different places, like the International Telecommunications Union in Geneva. Last week, we were in Riyadh at the Global Symposium for Regulators, where the regulators sat together under one roof, around one table, to discuss how they can overcome these challenges. So we see a lot of changes, we see a lot of positive, a lot of advantages around the discussion of collaborative regulation and cross-border policies. So infrastructure is there. What we need is this one adaptable, or what we call agile regulation, to not regulate, but just to monitor, to make this global infrastructure works properly.
Thank you, Dr. Chafic. And indeed, I mean, when you look specifically in this region, you do see a lot of differences country by country on some of very key policy matters, including, for example, data residency and so on. Maybe, Omar, you want to reflect maybe on the cross-border regulation point? Anything you would like to add on what Dr. Chafic was mentioning?
I think I agree with a lot of the points that Dr. Chafic has brought up, and this week I've attended also another conference for regional coordination on the spectrum, and you can see the importance of having a cross-border and unified coordination effort done, because some of they have been doing this for quite some time, and for the first time I've seen me attending that conference, they've said in the conference that They've pinpointed the successes where they have actually really coordinated and worked together. So it becomes really important for the region to coordinate cross-border, and then they can achieve more globally as a bloc when they go to these events and negotiation effort that takes place. They can achieve more. So it's quite a crucial point. It's quite a crucial point to have that cross-border coordination. That's true.
Great, thank you, Omar. Now moving on a bit on the topic, but still focusing on infrastructure. We collectively have experienced the pain of the recent event with the subsea cable cut and the impact that it had on internet traffic and the and bandwidth. So a question to you maybe first, Dr. Chafic, is with the importance of the telco infrastructure, including subsea cables, do we see a need to change how critical infrastructure, such as this, is being regulated, and maybe some pointers on what could be done to do things a bit differently?
Thank you for the question. It's really a timely question today. As you know, we are still feeling the disruption of the internet in UAE. We still see the slowness of the connectivity and even challenges to connect to some websites till today. So the sea cables or subsea cables are becoming really a critical infrastructure for the connectivity. And it's what happened this week, as you said, Emmanuel. It's not an isolated event. We saw many cuts in the recent years, and these cuts were because of sometimes of the fishing ships or act of malice. We are living in a very increasing geopolitical tension region, and things are changing every day. So what's happening with the sea sub cables is that governments need to take this not as infrastructure or not as a business for them. It should take this as a, let's say, life, critical life for the economy. So to have this mindset shift, I believe regulators need to play or to think in three dimensions. First, they need to change their mindset from national to international regulation. That means we need to work to collaborate with other stakeholders outside the borders. Second, they need to have more proactive regulation instead of reactive. That means they need to use the measurements, the statistics, the information that they have, the vulnerability of the connectivity, where they should have redundancy, where they see there is a risk, so they can base the regulation on this. And third, I think pillar is to move from siloed regulation to collaborative regulation. Once again, we need to work with the other sectors, private, technical community, because they have the technical expertise that they can give to regulators to position their regulation. So to have this mindset shift, I believe the regulators need to be more collaborative, more transparent, more agile, and to get these technical backgrounds so they can position themselves in the right place.
Very good. Thank you so much. And Omar, from your standpoint, I mean, is it the case of, as Dr. Chafic was articulating, a change in mindset from the regulators, or is it more the type of capabilities that now are needed on the regulator side that need to evolve, right? Because technology has evolved, and the criticality of some of those technical infrastructure has changed. What's your view in terms of the balance of this?
I think in terms of the GCC itself, let's start with that. I've seen the mind shift is actually somewhat there, because UAE, for instance, UAE has been quite keen on ensuring the continuity of business as usual, especially the business, the digital infrastructure that relies heavily on connectivity and submarine cables and etc. So the exercise, there is an annual exercise that the TDRA runs where they assume that all kinds of things could happen, and they want to make sure that connectivity is there. So they've added the global connectivity as part of the infrastructure that gets tested in these exercises. So they understand how important it is to continue this. They've done quite significant work to also enable alternatives when subsea cable happens. I know telecom operators would have that in place because it's their bread and butter to have continuous connectivity. But the work on the government/regulator level has always been there, and the push downwards on the operators to make sure that they have redundant connectivity, they have all the measures in place for the continuous operation of that connectivity. It's always been here in the UAE. And that's why you have such a, we got a Red Sea cable cut, but then, probably you had a bit of slow down in the internet experience, but continuity is there. So, and that implies to KSA as well. But I think, so the shift is there. What happens is how they implement it, and that's where the cross-border point of Dr. Chafic is probably quite important, because they need to have the ability to promote and probably build those alternative routes for connectivity when such a thing happens, or God knows if geopolitics becomes so bad in the region that cable cuts have become a common issue. So you need to have always these measures in place. So yeah, the shift has somewhat happened in the regulators, but more on the regional work needs to be done to enable the alternative routes of connectivity.
Good. Thank you, Omar.
If I may, just to add on Omar's contribution, if this cut happen in another area, as Omar said, we'll see a shutdown for the internet. But the work that UAE has done with the redundancy that they have, they rerouted all the international traffic to another, routes, and we still have the internet with some challenges, yes. So each country in the Middle East region, especially in the Gulf, they are seeking to be a digital hub. But once again, what we mean by digital hub? If we don't have connectivity, it's not a digital hub. So we need to work with our neighbors, we need to work with the region to be a regional hub. Because regional hub, that means you connect people to each other. You don't isolate people, you don't work in silo. So once again, UAE is doing a huge work, and they are there with their tools, with their strategy, with their future mindset, working to have really the UAE as a digital hub connecting the west to the east.
Very good. Thank you both for this. I'm going to slightly change the focus. So we talked a lot around fixed infrastructure, subsea cable, and so on. One important part of the equation is, of course, what's happening in the mobile space. Omar, for you, wanted to get your views around the big topic of regulation in 5G and then upcoming 6G technologies, and how do you see that evolving?
Oh God. Well, I mean, we've had 5G for quite some time now, and there was a lot of work that preceded the launch of 5G. But 5G, what we've seen of 5G is just is mostly known to people for the broadband access and mobile broadband access. But 5G is a lot more than that in reality. And the use cases for 5G has evolved quite a lot, and there's a lot happening in the industrial side of the world, where 5G is being deployed. In a lot of the parts in Europe, for instance, private network use cases based on 5G has been introduced, and that was mainly enabled by allocating spectrum for that particular use case or application. Spectrum that is not used by the main mobile operators for their voice and data services. So the key point here is enablement. Regulators should think of ways to enable 5G use cases and allocating spectrum for these use cases. So how they should approach it? I think the consensus is to sandbox a lot when it comes to regulation in that way. So you should do a lot of sandboxing for regulation and consult publicly on the use cases, and then try to accommodate for that. So unfortunately, for instance, here in the UAE, 5G spectrum was allocated from day one to do an Etisalat. Then there came the standalone 5G and the private networks of 5G, which is currently suffering from the lack of available spectrum. And there's a push for that, and the TDRA is looking into it, I believe, but still. So regulators should always think about enablement. So do not, for instance, go all at once and allocate all the spectrum from the get-go. And also try to maintain a forward-looking approach and consider all use cases for 5G/6G as well. 5G advances includes non-terrestrial networks as well, which is the high altitude type of networks, and satellite. So I think all these points should be considered by regulators and policymakers in the region. And the same applies to 6G, although it's still in the future, but they should learn from these quote-unquote mistakes that they've done with 5G and avoid them with 6G, in my opinion.
Very good, thank you so much. And do you see, particularly, I mean, you were talking about 5G private networks and use cases. Do you see any country outside of the GCC that has been particularly successful in enabling spectrum allocation and assignment to outside of the public telcos?
I think the GCC region, and MENA probably has the same issue when it comes to that. Europe has recently started allocating spectrum for private networks based on 5G. Germany is a good example. And Germany, because it's an industrial country, so it saw a huge demand on that once the regulator there announced it. So I think there's like an excess of 100, or I can't remember the number. There's a huge number of applicants and people who got the allocation. Some of them are big industrial companies, well known, and some of them are smaller companies. So that's a good example where probably everyone should benchmark in that aspect.
So if I look at, I mean, specifically when we look at those use cases, private 5G is an example, but there are many others, right, that can be enabled through a sandbox approach or consultative approach. I'm keen maybe to understand from you, Dr. Chafic, in terms of for this to happen, there needs to be the right level of consultation or the right level of engagement with different parties, right? It's not just government-led. You need to involve the technology ecosystem players. You need to involve the private sector, of course, government, academia potentially. What do you think is the right approach for the regulators in this region to enable this and make it happen?
No doubt that the region, we saw a lot of progress in this direction with the open consultation. So in the past years, I believe, 5 years ago, we didn't see any open consultation in any of these initiatives or projects. Today, we can see regulators are opening for contribution from everyone who is engaged or interested in the topic. So the open consultation is one of the important way to engage with the regulator. Second, what happened now today in the regulation arena is we see much of over-regulating sometimes because the regulators, they didn't get the right, feedback from these stakeholders. Here I want to raise a main issue, which is the need to, differentiate between 3 layers of responsibility. Once again, I will take the internet because it's the global infrastructure that is used by everyone. So we have, at the first level, we have the technical coordination. That means the functionality of the internet, how it works, which include the numbers and the names. Numbers, that means the IP address, which is unified for everyone. And the names, which is the domain name system. That means if we want to reach any website, we need to get the domain name system. So regulator should take care of this. Second, we have the internet governance. The internet governance here is how the people, how government, how business use the internet. And here comes the policy on cross-border, on cybersecurity, etc. in this area. And on the third layer, we have the digital policies. Digital policies, now we see at this highest layer is the AI, the fintech, all these digital technologies. So I believe a regulator should differentiate between these 3 layers because once again, I gave you the example today. My kids, they are asking me, what's the problem with the internet? We have internet down. It's not about the internet. The internet is there. There is a submarine cable cut. So for people who doesn't know exactly how things works, every time they say, yeah, the internet is down. Or sometimes, we face this every day. Hey, we need to cut the internet. There is a malicious message on Facebook. But Facebook is an application. Don't cut the internet. Just go to Facebook and talk to Facebook. So these kind of daily, issues happen. Regulators should need to differentiate what's what and who is responsible for what. And by the way, in the region, I work here, with all the Arab countries. Now they understand this, and they know exactly to whom they should direct their, concern and how to deal with this. It's not about, once again, if I have something that doesn't work on my phone, I break my phone. No. It's something, there's an application. We need to see what's the problem with the application. So this kind of collaboration between private, between technical, between governments, between the regulator is really a must. So each one in his or her expertise. I'm not saying that we are telling the regulator what to do. Of course not. But we want to make sure that the regulator have the good assets or the right information so that they can do their policy making.
Very good. Any additional comment on this, Omar?
No, I'll pass.
Very good. Now, it wouldn't be a panel on an ICT event without talking about AI. So we talked a lot on regulating the ICT infrastructure and so on. But if we flip the coin and look at RegTech, right, the use of technology in regulation, and the question for both of you, how do you think regulators can leverage, embed AI in terms of policy decision making and policy crafting?
Start?
Please, you have that back.
Okay. I mean, I'll say within the telecom and technology regulators sphere, just to have more focus. When it comes to telecom, I think the concept of RegTech is probably relatively new to the sector. It's not as much well known as, like, for instance, the financial sector. But there has been a lot of talk on this, and I think in the region I've seen KSA has leading the discussions on RegTech for the telecom sector. So that will eventually evolve into using AI applications to come up with better policies or do better policy making eventually. What is needed is probably having the data and the information, which Dr. Chafic kept always emphasizing on, which is you need to have the data required to make better policies and decision making. And I think you need to, so that means you need to lay the infrastructure and requirements for you to start having real RegTech applications in the telecom and the technology sectors. So it is happening in the region. I think it's just probably still in its infancy, and it will need some time until you reach to start to see something with wow factors and AI taking charge and doing things correctly, I believe. But I think that's just my opinion on it.
Yes, AI is a buzzword today. If I ask anyone what is AI, we will have different definitions. But regarding the AI and regulation, once again, I will go back to the last week meeting in Riyadh. 130 regulators were there, and the outcome was best practice regulation for 2025. And this best practice, it includes AI usage in regulation. But for me, that doesn't mean that we should really have the AI as a one decision maker. Of course not. You know that AI, whatever data you give, you will get the outcome. So if the regulators give the bad data or the wrong data to AI, so we'll have a wrong output, and we'll have a fragmented regulation. So we need to make sure that AI is there to help them in managing and monitoring the data, in monitoring any failure in the networks, in helping them in the operational or in the implementation of the sandboxes. But I believe the final decision making should be a human one, should go back to the regulator himself. So AI is very important if we use it wisely.
Great, excellent. So I think this almost brings us to a nice close. But just maybe before we wrap up the panel, we talked a lot right around evolving the role of the regulators, the sort of cross-border regulation, and maybe just your final thoughts on the fact that, I mean, historically we've seen, right, the regulators across the world, not just in the region, really across the world, looking at their role in regulating their domestic market, right, be it from price regulation, market dominance, and so on. Do we see the need for them to evolve in being less focused on domestic market regulation, but more focused on how do they enable their ICT sector in the country to make sure that their nation becomes global competitive player in the ICT space.
Well, I'll go back to the example of the conference that I attended earlier this week, and I think it's not becoming they're less focused on the local topic. I think they're becoming equally focused on the regional and global coordinations because, again, like I said, on the regional level, especially with the kind of advancement or the achievements they have realized by grouping and working together and having a unified position, that puts a lot of emphasis on the importance of coordinating regionally and working together. And yeah, I mean, they become also best representatives of their own countries when they go to these platforms and meet with the rest of the regulators. So I think it's becoming equally important to work and develop that capability globally and regionally, because there are benefits certainly, and even more than any time before, in my opinion.
As you know, everything is changing. The way we live in the past, the way we work, the way we do our daily routine tasks is changing. Same thing here. I believe regulators, they know that their role is changing too. Not changing, evolving, let's say. That means while they are assuming the responsibility at the national level, as you said, keeping competition fair, protecting consumer rights, all these things, they have now the responsibility to put their countries on the global stage of digital economy. And this cannot happen without this dialogue, without discussions, without sharing best practices and know-how. So I believe the regulator now, they need to change their role from regulating to innovating, to give incentives. And what I heard from the discussion last year in Riyadh, I believe all regulators, they know this, and they are trying to do their best to follow the trend of having this balance between national and international relation and public policy related to internet and telecom.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a nice way to end this panel. I would just like again to extend my thanks and gratitude, Omar and Dr. Chafic, for the very engaging and interesting discussion. And I hope it was also insightful for the audience. And thanks again, and hope to see both of you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.